Well, it's here. It's finally here. Apple Music Classical. Now, it feels a little weird for Apple to release a spin-off app of Apple Music and just focus on one genre, but we've been waiting for almost a year and a half since Apple purchased the classical music streaming service Prime Phonic in August of 2021. And they told us they were going to be releasing a standalone classical music app using the framework from both Apple Music and Prime Phonic. But you may ask, why? Why would Apple release a music app just for classical music alone? Well, since the app recently came out and I've been using it, I think I have a better understanding of why this app exists. Now, to use Apple Music Classical, you're going to need an Apple Music subscription to access this app, which amounts to about $5 a month on the lowest plan. But besides the price, let's actually get into the app itself. Now, on the first opening of the app, you may notice that the layout looks quite similar to the Apple Music app, with tabs for listening now, browsing, viewing your library, or searching your music. You might actually mistake it for the Apple Music app at first glance. The music database is even the same, only filtered to only include classical music. But the differences in this app are important for what this app is trying to achieve. The first page on the Apple Music Classical app is the Listen Now tab. This is full of all kinds of different playlists and albums for classical music and all categorized as well. For example, you'll see playlists and albums for new releases, albums for music that can be listened to in spatial audio, albums for recently updated works, or music you've been listening to recently. Basically, the Listen Now page is essentially a page for when you don't know what you want to listen to and just want to look around, just like the Listen Now tab in the Apple Music app. But I want to mention one new category exclusively for the Apple Music Classical app that I found quite interesting. It's called The Story of Classical, and it's basically like an audiobook with the narrator telling you the history of classical music, with classical music playing in between his little monologues. I listened to a bit of it and found it quite interesting. I think I may finish it. If you have an Apple Music subscription, I would honestly check out Apple Music Classical just for that part alone. The next tab is the Browse tab. The Browse tab also has categories to search classical music from, but the layout is more defined and simplified. There are 3 sections to choose from: Catalog, Playlist, and Instruments. The catalog has categories for composers, periods, genres, conductors, orchestras, soloists, ensembles, and choirs. The Playlist section has an assortment of playlists such as classical music for different moods, or just an entire playlist for Beethoven by genre. The last section is my favorite. It's the Instruments section. In this section, there are categories for a wide range of instruments, each one with classical music featuring that instrument. Now, back in my marching band days, I used to play the alto saxophone, and it has been a little hard to find classical music featuring the saxophone on any other streaming app. But now there's a whole category for classical music featuring the saxophone, and it has become one of my favorite categories in the app. And now we move on to the Library tab. This tab is the section for all of your saved music and sorts them out by different criteria. Now, I have kind of a problem with the Library tab. For one, unlike Apple Music, your recently added albums are not shown below your sorted music sections here. It wouldn't be that big of an issue, but clicking on one of the sections takes a little bit to load, which makes searching through your saved music feel a bit tedious. But yeah, that's about all the Library tab really does. Now for the biggest reason for the existence of the Apple Classical Musical app: the search function. As you may have noticed, I've talked a lot about categories and sections and other tabs. This is what makes Apple Music Classical what it is: a classical music sorting machine. Every track is sorted independently by things like composer, the artist, the featured instrument, and many more. Take a look at the Apple Music app here. If you search for something like Mozart, all that are listed here are albums and playlists with Mozart's name in the title. If you search Mozart on the Apple Musical Classical app, however, you will see results such as the artists who have covered Mozart's music, every single one of his works, and every artist who has covered them, and the albums and the playlists featuring Mozart. So as you can see, Apple Music Classical's search functions is the biggest point of the Apple Music Classical app. Now, while some of these issues that I mentioned seem a bit small, there is one that I think is pretty major. This app was only developed for mobile devices. It will come to iPhone, and it will come to Android later. So no iPad, no TV, no MacBook, none of that. Some people may want to listen to music using their wired headphones on their Mac. And then also some people just may want a bigger screen to browse classical music. Technically, you can use Apple Classical on the iPad, but I mean, come on. This isn't how it should be. I hope they decide to release it for the Apple TV, Mac, and iPad in the future. But despite a few flaws, I think Apple Music Classical is terrific. I've always loved classical music, but I've found it a bit hard to browse and search for it on different streaming sites, and that also includes the normal Apple Music app. I can see this app making me a bigger fan of classical music in general, and I would recommend that you at least try out the app. I mean, who knows? You may become a fan of classical music in the end too. So I do appreciate you watching. If you like this video, please subscribe. It would really help me out. This is a very small channel currently. So yeah, any help would be great. And then I wouldn't mind a comment or two, some criticism, maybe ways I can improve the video itself or just the review. But without further ado, I thank you and goodbye.